right, so let's talk about our main topic, and that is crowdfunding. How should it be used? Well, the answer a couple years ago would be obvious, and it essentially is the same answer today, right? Uh, a lot of people use crowdfunding, whether it's for tech items, consumable items, consumer products, or creative works, right? Like comics. It's for said creator to be able to get funding to bring that product or project to life versus right just going right to retail, tossing it on Amazon, etc. Because those creators need investment funds, they need help again to bring it to life, and in a lot of cases, if that doesn't happen, such creations don't come to life. And so that seems kind of obvious, right? However, the narrative around crowdfunding has been shifting when it comes to specifically comics, not so much tech items, consumer products, right? Because right when it comes to toys, for example, if you want to do a figurine, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars because you have injection molds, you have large minimum order quantities that you have to run with these injection mold suppliers. So most people do not have tens of thousands of dollars just laying around to make a toy. Otherwise, we'd all have toys on our campaigns, right? That'd be amazing, but it's just not feasible. So that's a given there. But when it comes to comics, because of this recent push for pre-ordered books, I think a lot of people are getting a misconception that everyone is in the same position and should be able to do the same thing. Now, a lot of us would love to just be able to create a comic on our own dime, have it be affordable, the whole nine yards. But I think a lot of people don't realize how expensive it is to make a comic, right? You're not talking like a novel, for example. If I wanted to just release one of my novels, wouldn't be a big deal, right? For some folks, you might be talking a couple $100 in cover art and then an editor, let's say total maybe $2,000, right? Toss it up on Amazon, boom, you're done. $2,000. A lot of people could raise those funds over the time that you're writing the novel, which could be a year, 2 years, right? Bring it to life. No big deal. Well, not many comics will only cost you $2,000, especially since you have to print them yourselves, right? You're not using a Barnes and Noble, a Amazon, for example, to print for you and then take a chunk of your royalties, for example. So for comic creators, you're talking 5, 10, 15, 20 plus $1,000 if you want to do a moderate quality to high quality comic, especially if you're doing right 48 pages plus. And what's happened is, some YouTubers, for example, have came into the space and done pre-order campaigns because they have disposable income at the ready to where all the costs covered, no problem, even if they don't get a lot of pre-orders. Unfortunately, again, that's not a luxury that most people have. And that's why crowdfunding is so crucial. It's the only way that you could realistically bring that book or that project to life. Because again, you're talking several thousand to tens of thousands of dollars that you need to raise. And so what's happening, and we're seeing this in pricing too a bit. They'll say, oh, well, and these are a lot of times new backers or new customers to indie comics. They'll say, well, comic creator A did this. Well, everybody should be able to do this, right? Well, it's like, no, because not everyone is in the same financial situation. Not everyone has the same Twitter following or the same number of YouTube subscribers, for example. The other thing too is we don't have a reasonable mainstream anymore, right? Folks can't submit their stories to the mainstream and have it judged based off of merit, based on the quality, based on the actual story. In a lot of cases, the creators are being judged based off of check boxes, right? Race, gender, sexuality. Um, the stories are being judged based off of how diverse they are, the characters, diversity, genders, so on and so forth, right? And this has obviously, especially with the surge in the past, 15 years with crowdfunding comics, that's made crowdfunding that much more crucial for folks that are passionate about comics and have a dream of bringing their comic to life. Because again, you can't rely on that opportunity with the mainstream. And even if you have a killer book, killer art, it there's a good chance it's not going to be judged the way it would have been 20, 30, 40 years ago. So again, that puts a lot of creators in a pickle, right? And that is, do I potentially put, my family's financial health at risk to fund it all in advance, and then if I don't sell enough, well, and we've actually heard of folks that have done that, and they've put a strain on their family and stuff, which is a horrible situation to be in. Um, or they're in this situation where they're like, well, I'm gonna have to cut cost in order to do pre-ordering, which means probably hiring lower quality artists, trying to again cut corners. There's a lot of ways you can cut corners in everything in life, and so you're sacrificing quality, and that's obviously a shame. That goes against hard work and the foundation that comics have been built on, as well as traditional novels. So it's really unfortunate again that this narrative has been being generated because of folks that don't understand the industry. They don't understand the process of creating a comic. And so their expectations are unrealistic in a lot of cases. The other thing they're not considering are, for ex pros, for example, or they're still professionals, but right, they're not working for the mainstream anymore. Their entire livelihood is based around their art, it's based around these projects. So they got to pay for health insurance, they got to pay for housing, they got to pay for everything as a result of their art. And if it takes them several months, if not year or years, to pump out the best book possible, I mean, how can you expect them to wait, right, to make the money back for all that time invested? They've got to find a way to support themselves and their families. And that's the beauty that crowdfunding that has provided, is that, hey, they can get that funding for that book that allows them to crank that work out, provide an awesome book to folks, and support their family at the same time. And I don't think a lot of these new indie customers or comic customers are putting those things into perspective and considering it. And even for folks that it's not their source of income or their livelihood, right? A lot of us work 9 to 5s and we do this on the side. Even if you want to do this on the side and you need to pay 10 plus thousand dollars, especially as a writer, right? You've got to cover the cost of everything. It's a little bit different if someone can draw their own book and all that, but there's still a lot of costs involved. You still got to print the books, all of that, right? Um, Not a lot of people have $10,000 of disposable income that they can risk, pulling away from their family or their safety net to create a comic. And I don't think folks should be expected to do that, especially if they're going into crowdfunding with the right intentions and the right approach to make sure that their backers are treated properly. And so, and the same thing's happening to pricing to an extent, right? That's why I did a video on our comics, indie comics overpriced, because some people are trying to reduce costs as almost a way of virtue signaling. Now, again, this is not geared towards the folks that have lowered their prices or became really competitive, right? They all have their own reasoning to do it. A lot of them, they just say, "Hey, I want to bring value to you. I want to be competitive, and hey, this is $5 or $10. Nothing wrong with that, right? It's on them to make sure that they're covered and protected. But some of the issue is some creators are coming in saying, "Hey, all of indie comics are overpriced. Everyone needs to get their price down. Look at my price. Look at how low it is compared to everybody else. Come back me," basically, instead of backing them. Like, "Hey, look at me. I'm doing it better than they are." And the same thing's happening with the pre-ordering to an extent. Some folks are like, "Hey, I'm able to do this in advance while you're going to wait a year for those folks. So you should come over to me instead of them." And it's like, that is not helping the community at all. We should be trying to lift up everybody doing crowdfunding, whether it's pre-order style or traditional style crowdfunding, right? And that's really tainting the space, in my opinion, are those folks with that narrative push for pricing as well as pre-ordering. Because again, we're trying to bring people to crowdfunding as much as possible, right? Everyone is so tailor-made to go to Amazon, right, for everything. They're not printing comics to my knowledge yet, right? But when it comes to novels and everything else, go to Amazon, free shipping, blah blah blah. It's easy. So, especially for novelists like myself, it's really hard to like, hey guys, by the way, crowdfunding exists. You know, remember you loved reading comics when you were younger? Hey, here's where you get indie comics, right? They got to create an account, they got to pay shipping, right? It's not super easy to convince like the average person to come and support crowdfunding unless you personally know them. Because in a lot of cases, that's an easy sale per se. These narratives are making it even harder to pull customers or readers into crowdfunding, and that's what's damaging the entire space. Now, some people might have their own website, so yeah, they don't have to worry about the whole crowdfunding aspect, especially if they're pre-ordering or doing a pre-order setup. And again, not knocking the pre-order setup at all. I essentially did that on my campaign. I was fortunate enough to be in a position to where I could just use money out of my paycheck, right, to cover it. And, I was able to hedge my risks and have no issues. Things worked out in the end. It's not the case for everybody, though. So, no issue with people doing pre orders, having their own websites. By all means, that's fantastic. It's if you're trying to push a narrative that is trying to push people away from the other styles of doing crowdfunding or other methods, as well as pricing in order to garner your own backers or essentially try to uh forgot the word I was trying to think of here, but they're trying to make sure that they're keeping as many customers in their backyard and preventing them from leaving their backyard and visiting other backyards per se. So I'm not a fan of said narratives, obviously. So I'm going to pull up a tweet here that I think is quite relevant to the topic. Um, it's kind of going to be two pronged. The one prong is going to be folks that are doing crowdfunding and then later on putting a version of that book in comic shops, right? Because there has been a little bit of discussion around that on Twitter. And then it also leads into the topic of just this whole pushing for pre-orders for essentially on crowdfunding campaigns. So let me pull this up here. All right, let's check in on the chat. Sorry, I got on a little bit of a rant and I forget to look over there. We have one of my awesome artists here from the Vigilantes Creed campaign. We have Corey Barton. How's it going? Ah, and here is Frost Comics, friend of the channel, and the gentleman whose comic we took a look at earlier in the stream here. So it says, fashionably late. I can afford to pay for a 20-page or so comic out of my own pocket over the course of a year or two, but if I wanted to publish a 60-page plus story, I need crowdfunding to make it happen. Yeah, and that would be the case for most of us. And see, that's part of why I did what I did with my campaign. I would have loved to just jumped, headfirst into a full blown comic campaign. Man, I've been itching to do that, right? But I didn't have much of a following. I did not have an established YouTube channel, and I just saw throughout the landscape of some of the folks who were succeeding and the folks that were not succeeding on their campaigns, and you could tell which ones right had a YouTube presence, had a good following, had good interactions on Twitter, right, versus the ones that did not. And so I was like, okay, I need to be patient. And I have these novels done. I'm going to release these novels and just go with them again, a mini comic. Give folks a taste of the quality that they can expect, the style of art that they can expect in the future, and again, give them that visual aspect of the storytelling, right? Or the medium. And so I wanted to kind of marry the two mediums, give everybody the best of both worlds in a sense. and market it primarily to indie comic readers, which is it's a tough sell, right? But I am so glad I did it that way because that helped me get ready to do YouTube streaming, get used to streaming with other folks, pitching my books, which that is always going to be difficult to an extent if you're an introvert. But um, it also allowed me to build my Twitter following, etc. Get myself enough confidence to do a full comic issue and hopefully raise more money than I expected so that I can put that directly towards the next campaign or comic, right? So that I have basically a springboard to get that going versus having to fully rely on backers, right? Initially. So, but yeah, there's a chance I might still need to get funding in advance. We'll see. But I'm glad that option exists. And I hate that some people are essentially trying to tell folks that, hey, folks should not be asking for backing money in advance. It should be done 100% before. And it's like, that'd be horrible if that option didn't exist. If crowdfunding didn't exist, all the awesome books that wouldn't be out there and how, some amazing creators out there wouldn't have been able to grow the way they've been able to. So it's really disgusting how some folks are really trying to convince folks not to support crowdfunding or traditional style crowdfunding. Like, would you do that when it comes to tech items, right? Consumer products, right? All those people that go on Shark Tank, for example, right? Looking for investments and all that. Like, do you expect everyone to be sitting on money to be able to bring a dream to life? Like, come on, it's not realistic. All right, let's see. Yep, Frost is asking how the chat's going. And yeah, Len lurks more, costs a lot to make a comic. Costs even more when your artist disappears halfway through. Ooh, yeah. And see, that's one of the aspects we'll have to touch on is the fact that life hits people at different times and in different ways. We've seen creators who have had severe medical issues that have created delays. We've seen creators lose family members, right? Stuff that anyone should be able to sympathize with and should not later on end up lumping them in with, hey, they're damaging crowdfunding or generalizing late books and all this bullshit because it's like, the big 2, they would just find a new artist, start over, they got plenty of money. They got literally a bullpen of line artists and inkers and colorists. We do not. And a lot of the indie creators, right, they're working on several projects. Like, it's not like this plethora of available creators, especially if you're extremely particular about detail or the style you're looking for. It's very, very difficult. And so, yeah, a situation like that, if you get burned by an artist, for example, and you've already got the crowdfunder, funded, that's tough, right? You gotta start over potentially with a new artist or blend in their art. Like, yeah, but what could a writer do in that situation other than tell the backers like, hey, this is the situation I'm in, please bear with me. Frost says, I've only had one, maybe two people who just abandoned their projects and didn't finish. Everyone else have backed, has always honored their backers' trust. Yeah, I've only had one so far that looks like it may not get shipped. Otherwise, every single campaign has either been shipped or right. I'm getting updates and it's going to be coming. So I have no idea why I would blame anyone other than the person who abandoned their backers for that behavior. Yep. Even if the people were late, when they communicate with their backers, I can wait. Yeah, exactly. It's all about the communication. And yeah, if you want to have a chip on your shoulder, don't have it be with the concept of crowdfunding. Don't have it be with all indie creators. Don't generalize a group of people, right? Basic human shit. Um, just have a chip on your shoulder for that specific creator or those creators that have burned you per se. Welcome, Jimmy Lumberjack. How's it going? Marcus Kelleher, welcome. Can't believe I actually have a lot of comments. I want to click on all of them. Yeah, really awesome to have this many people here watching. Very, very humbling, and I appreciate that, folks. All right. Jimmy says crowdfunding is the coolest to make art happen. In the 80s, these independent books would never get made. These are good times now using crowdfunding. Yeah, that's true. Exactly. There's some amazing video games that only exist because of crowdfunding. And given the budget of video games, they have to get a lot of money first. Yep, to fund the project. Ah, JJ Trujillo, welcome, man. Katie did said she'd kill me if I didn't show up. Yeah, it's another gentleman here that also writes novels. We'll have to have him on the channel here one of these days. He does some awesome clips for Trashcast and has an awesome stream. I think every Saturday or so he does one. But yeah, definitely go subscribe to his channel. Yeah. So Marcus highlights here. David Williams' wife is in hospice and he can't work on Fearsome right now. Yeah, he and EVS are unfortunately going to be killed for having a late book. In terms of how people are going to treat them. Unfortunately, yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some agitators out there, as I call them, right? The scorned crowd of Twitter and YouTube that will take any opportunity to bash folks. But yeah, I mean, Jesus, that is a horrible, horrible situation. I pray that you know, for strength for his family and for him to get through this. And I don't know the details. There is I don't have the link readily available, but if you go to my page or go to David Williams's page, he has a link for I think like a GoFundMe. So everyone, please check it out, give if you can. But yeah, that's an example, right? Shit happens. Horrible shit can happen that can put a project on pause. That yeah, everyone should have sympathy and understanding towards that. So, but yeah, I'm glad you brought that up though, so that folks can go check out that GoFundMe, and yeah, let's definitely do what we can because yeah, David's a great member of the community, so let's help him out if we can. All right, so here we go. Let's go with this tweet here, and then real quick we have Baki here. Yeah, welcome. How's it going? All right, so to start, this is a tweet that is uh, in my opinion, I'd like to call it a propaganda page. I'm sure folks are aware of this agitator, but some good conversation or conversation points came out of this tweet, and so that's why I wanted to go through it. So here he says, Student of God says, the death of CG campaigns. She fan here. I will not be backing yours or anyone else's Indiegogo/ Kickstarter that does this. I will just wait and save money, probably save about 20 bucks per book and get it from the shop from your local comic shop, probably about 15 bucks and 3 floppies. Nice grammar, but that's kind of his thing is horrible grammar. From Indiegogo, about $35. Okay. So essentially, the original tweet was him just notifying folks that this ebook is coming to comic shops. And seemed like Student of God jumped the gun on this, obviously to stir the pot, to agitate and get some of those Twitter interactions that some people are so desperate for. So I'm glad Billy responded. He said, "Hello, student of God. The She Haikyo campaign ended in 2020, so right 5 years ago, essentially, and was fulfilled in 2021. Our plan is to offer signed, superior quality OGNs with a ton of stretch goals exclusively to the crowdfunding partners. And then after 4 or 5 years, that larger book is broken down into multiple floppies, right? Where dust jackets, sewn in book ribbons, and all of the premium aspects that folks get in crowdfunding will not be available, right? So he gives a really nice professional breakdown here. Fantastic response. And it's funny because there's some of these agitators that go really hard on like if you're not in comic shops, right? You're not a real comic creator or you're failing or blah blah blah. I'm not sure where Student of God stands on that whole position, but or that whole topic. But this is doing it right, in my opinion. Right, you have a premium book that you give to your backers. You have stretch goals that could be bookmarks, that could be prints. Right, you could have premium cardstock, heavier paperweight, all those things. Right, a book that would look phenomenal for your crowdfunding campaign. And then later on, after everyone's received their books, right? After every backer is happy, you put it on the shelves of comic shops, and typically it's a more standard floppy. It's not going to be the same quality, and it's not going to have, in terms of paper and right appearance and all that, and it's not going to have all the extras that you would get from a crowdfunding campaign. This is very smart for Billy to do, and this is what a lot of pros do, and small creators like myself as well, right? We'll get books on local comic book shops, whether it's through consignment or they'll buy them directly from us, because yeah, you do want to get it out to a wider audience, but you're not going to be able to charge crowdfunding prices. You're just not going to be able to. Um, and you also want to be able to afford to print your books for comic shops. So yeah, this is the way to do it. So, but very very good response there. So let me see if I can find the. All right, so this is the telling reason for his tweet, right? This is the guilt by association that we've all came to hate and recognize so quickly. He says, "I posted this because I heard from EVS recently that a lot of CG Kings are thinking about putting their books in shops. Not to pick on you or anything, except for he literally did by calling him out, right? Because almost all of his posts are to bring negative attention toward things. Obvious. Uh, but anyways, it's really hard as a reader to justify the extra costs. If I was a collector, maybe I would feel different. That Rob, Liefeld cover is fire, by the way. So this is there's some context that's missing to this whole, I guess, conversation here, and that's well, the book wouldn't get in comic shops if it didn't come to life, and if we are relying on crowdfunding to bring it to life, hmm, it wouldn't get in comic shops, right? And that's what a lot of people forget. These projects, these IPs wouldn't even exist without crowdfunding. Most people do not have the funds readily available to bring them to life. So he's just taking advantage of the fact that he had awesome backers that wanted to invest in his product. They wanted to have a premium book and all the extras. And then he puts it out to the wider audience. Absolutely nothing wrong with what he's doing here at all. And again, probably wouldn't even exist if there wouldn't be awesome crowdfunding backers that brought it to life in the first place. And this is why we need crowdfunding, especially as indies, because crowdfunding can give you that launch pad to get it into comic shops, to get bigger exposure, right? If you wanted to submit your property to the mainstream, right, or other independent publishers, that's because of the backers. And if these anti crowdfunding narratives get pushed harder to pull away potential new backers, but existing backers, you're not only hurting the creators, you're hurting the readers, you're hurting the audience because it will not get in front of an audience potentially. So, but again, he brings up EVS as always. The only reason he brought it up was in my opinion, he wanted to poke at EVS. This was his way of going through Billy to try to damage EVS. And Billy did absolutely nothing wrong here. He's been nothing but professional. But for some reason, he wanted to agitate and use Billy in order to do that. Why? Because of who he associates with. And this is the utter bullshit that is tainting the space right here. So let's see here. There was another part of this that I thought was really intriguing. And yeah, you have a lot of interesting comments. I won't go through all of them, but there was one specifically that I wanted to highlight. This is just completely off the wall response in my opinion. And again, just the hyper focus of some of these folks on a individual creator is just wild. I'm blocked by him. Have no idea why, but probably for the best. Said EVS's BS has tarnished crowdfunding for indie comics. I have many great ideas for indie comics, and I already have an illustrator on board to help draw, etc. But how am I going to get funding when people are now afraid to cause Oh, afraid. It's supposed to say because of what EBS did to this, it is now impossible. Talking about being dramatic, right? Um, Crowdfunding still exists. There's absolutely no reason that folks can't get funded or raise money. I'm an example. Patrick Quinlan here in the chat is an example who just got his book funded. Corey Barton, right? All these folks have gotten their books funded. It's still possible. All he has to do is market himself, have a desirable book, and network. The problem is some of these folks are literally kneecapping themselves when it comes to networking, right? Because they don't like one particular creator that is in a group. So they're going to purposely disassociate from that entire group. That group is not just creators and some fantastic creators, right? CG. It's thousands and thousands of backers. So you want to market yourself away from thousands and thousands of backers? Maybe that's why it seems impossible because you have some fantastic fans and backers that would back a great book, especially if said creator isn't going around bashing other creators, which is essentially what's happening in this thread, right? It's just completely absurd. EVS has delivered on every single book. He does keep folks updated. Folks understand why he's quote unquote late, right? And in a lot of cases, you end up getting a lot more bang for your buck. You get an extra, 20, 30 plus pages and a lot of those extra premiums. But regardless of your opinion on that, to think that all of crowdfunding has been damaged because of one person is wild. Well, go on Kickstarter then. He's never used Kickstarter, right? That's an entire potential audience, right? So just create a killer book. Make sure you can pitch it properly. You should be fine, right? That just seems like a cop out to me. So this was actually the tweet response that I wanted to highlight in the end, and this goes again more towards the whole pre-order narrative, right, around crowdfunding. So that's in response to that previous reply that I had read. So this person says, agreed. The only way to get people back to creating crowdfunding campaigns now is to have the book 100% done before launch. People are tired of getting screwed over. I've backed at least 200 crowdfunded books. 20% fulfill on time, 50% late, and the other 30% goes to their backers. So if 30% of them actually ghosted him, of course, that's horrible, right? If those are books from years ago, they stopped giving updates, and it looks like they're never going to fulfill. Absolutely, that's shitty, right? And at least you can, in the future, avoid those creators, right? Minimize, your future risk. You could decide to just back creators that have a history of fulfilling, right? Regardless of if they're, again, late or not. So I don't understand again why you would essentially take it out on the entire crowdfunding space. And if you expect folks to have the book 100% done in advance, well, they don't technically need to crowdfund then, right? They can just build their own website. They likely should have the money then to build their own website. But then again, you're pulling away from those crowdfunding websites, and we should be really thankful that they exist, right? Because it sounds like, right, 140 or so books that he got wouldn't have happened without crowdfunding. So unless all 140 of them were shit, which I highly doubt, I don't know how he could not want to continue to back crowdfunders, or he wouldn't be thankful to an extent that he backed crowdfunded campaigns. Um, if folks didn't do crowdfunding and these sites didn't exist, I mean, he'd probably end up having maybe 20 books to purchase because most folks would be able to afford to do this pre-order approach. And again, I've seen a lot of different comments and thoughts in this same vein of, well, again, creator A and B, they're doing pre-orders. Why can't everybody else? Well, again, some folks are sitting on a lot of money, or they have a pre-cultivated audience, whether it's through YouTube, Twitter, right? You name it, it's going to be a lot easier for them in so many different ways than just an average Joe who has no following that wants to bring a book to life, or even an ex mainstream creator. So I hope that that 30%, right, are just, maybe there's some of those in there that are late for valid reasons and eventually they'll receive them. But um, this type of narrative does not help crowdfunding. It does not help indie comics. Having crazy expectations that, hey, people should have several thousand, if not tens of thousands of dollars available, or they should risk taking loans, or this, that, or the other, or they should have to reduce the quality of their book or reduce their page count, right? Minimize the potential essentially of their creations in order to fit this pre-order model is just, it's unfortunate. And I hope that it doesn't convince other people to have the same mindset essentially. And again, this goes in the same thing. It's in the same vein as the whole pricing discussion of, yeah, but this person, they offer this book at this price. Everyone should be able to offer it at that price. And again, these might be folks that they don't understand the space, they don't understand the cost. So they just have this kind of normie consumer approach of, well, if A can do it, B can do it. And it's not that simple. Project A that was, let's say, $10, for example, right? Maybe the page counts in total were a third of project B, right? Maybe it was half the page count, right? There's all these different variables that go into the pricing. And so you should not peanut butter spread a expectation across the entire space that, hey, every book needs to become cheaper. Every book needs to be $10. Yada yada yada. That's absurd. Every book is different, different quality, um, different team, all of that. So it's not a simple discussion. But yeah, there's just so many comments in here that are interesting that you could have conversations around. Would probably take hours to read through all of them, but you have folks saying that yeah, the crowdfunding approach has been abused by too many, in quotation marks, artists for whatever reason, laziness, business issues, talent changes, printing issues, personal issues. Most can understand the issues that can arrive, if the campaign owner is transparent, responsible, and responding. Problem is, good faith has been abused by too many, especially for people who have been in the space for years. One bad apple can indeed spoil the bunch. It turns out crowdfunding is good in theory, but not in the way it's been applied. See, I can't agree with the whole one bad apple can spoil the bunch. It's pretty easy. Throw out that apple if you don't like that apple. Stop backing that person's campaign, stop following what they're doing, find a different creator to support. The problem is there are folks that are obsessing over said creators that they think are bad apples and just hyperfixating on them for years. You don't like how one campaign was ran, just move on. Don't support that creator, right? Or wait until they put it on eBay years later or whatever. But it's wild to then push a narrative around the entire space that a lot of artists are abusing their backers. A lot of artists are potentially lazy, things of that nature, because that's not the case. I mean, look at the recent surge just in the CG space of creators that have came in aggressively with great timing on their books and have had awesome customer service, right? You have Aaron, Immortal Rising, right? He's cranked out Immortal Rising 1, fulfilled in a very quick fashion. You had Hojo, you have Patrick, you have myself, you have Richard Ombre, right? The list goes on and on and on. Even the big guys, right? Shane Davis, Graham Nolan, Mike Barron. There are a ton. I think all of the folks that I interact with um, are fantastic apples. Um, so just because you might not like one, you should not be judging all of them as a result. That's absurd. So so yeah, that was the main item there I want to discuss. But it's yeah, it's unfortunate. And for folks that are new to the channel, I have done individual videos on such topics. So I have one in regards to quantity versus quality. I have one on the anti-crowdfunding narratives from probably 6 months or so ago that applies exactly to this, and also one in regards to pricing. So